Hello, everyone. Hello, Frank. How are you folks doing?
Hey, good. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, you look good, Frank. Like something has changed with your skin. Where are you now?
Oh, I am at a conference in south of France, in Rivia Dev conference. Very interesting conference with developers, but many different topics. So, many sessions about databases also. Postgres everywhere. when it is about databases, Postgres everywhere.
Yeah, let's start about probably one of the most interesting part. Where this located, like geographically, because not everyone. We are all over the place.
That's the southeast of France. In general, in France, all companies are all centralized in Paris. And in the south of France, there is Sophia Antipolis. I think it was built in the 70s or 80s. The idea was to build within the forest, to build a technology pole with many companies. And for example, Air France, the airline, Amadeus, the booking companies there. There are some pharmaceutical like Galderma, IBM at the center there. So the idea was to build a kind of Silicon Valley of France there.
Excellent. And we can even see, like from your appearance, that location is influencing you in a positive way because you have enough of sun, right? I see that you're.
Oh yeah, but it's very hot. Yeah. That's why I wanted to do it live from the conference venue, but I prefer to go to the hotel with the conditioned air and good Wi-Fi and.
Yep, wonderful. And I saw a few tweets of yours, and looks like you met a joint friend of us at the conference, Nicholas Frankel.
Oh yes. Yeah, I met him a lot in Java conferences, developer conferences. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he lives very near Geneva. So he lives in France, but near Geneva. So we are not so far. So I also meet him sometimes in small local meetups around Geneva or Lausanne.
Okay, all right. And how was your talk? How was it perceived by the developers and the audience?
That was nice. It was a 3 hours workshop talking about SQL in general. And the interesting thing is that people know SQL, but depending on the age, they have learned databases and SQL differently. A lot of theory for people who have learned that at the same time as I did, and juniors see it in another way. But yeah, always interesting discussions, and many developers convinced that SQL is a solution for many use cases. There are still some use cases for no SQL, but yeah. And Postgres. And when you ask people what they are using, of course there are still a lot of Oracle, but new developments, it's all Postgres or Postgres compatible databases.
That's a good trend. I think that there was a misperception that SQL or SQL, there are different ways how we pronounce it. It's not the best way to go, but the reality shows that SQL can be easy and it can be advanced. It's up to you how you want to use your SQL capabilities and your SQL knowledge. And probably one day I will make it to one of your courses. And by the way, speaking about the Postgres popularity, we all keep talking that if you go to the DB Engine's website, you can see that Postgres is one of the fastest growing relational database, but also Stack Overflow had a surveyed 80,000 developers asking like, what's your favorite database? And
and
Postgres is...
I'm showing a screenshot. That was a session from Kevin Davin. Is doing a lot of talks about databases, and this one was about Postgres. And he mentioned Yugabyte because he was talking about the scalability of Postgres, the ability to run Postgres on Kubernetes, and then he mentioned the cloud native PG operators and Yugabyte. So that was also interesting to see that. it's not only Postgres, it's the Postgres ecosystem and everything there. And we are even there, even if not directly presenting Yugabyte.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, but I think that's a positive thing that YugabyteDB is part of the Postgres community. We have our own community, but nevertheless, we are a part of the Postgres community because we are built on Postgres, and the Postgres is an ecosystem. Like, nevertheless, how many days are you gonna spend at the conference? Are you coming back home soon, or?
Yeah, that's the last day. Actually, my plan has changed because the rest of my family is in Avignon, just nearby, and the goal was that they came today for 2 days spending there. But my elder son is sick, so they stayed there, and I will go to Avignon tomorrow.
That's the right move. Yep. I also will be doing that sometime in the future once my kids get a little bit I would say
when the conferences are during school holidays, then it's the occasion to come with the family.
Exactly. All right, thanks for sharing the update. And folks who has joined us or joining us, welcome to the 4th episode of their Community Open Hours. That's the place for us to meet and to discuss the latest updates from their vault of YugabyteDB. And also that's the platform for you to bother us with your questions and challenges related to the database. So today we have a special guest, and this guest will be join us live in a few minutes. His name is Radek, and he is the one who enabled the support for the PostgreSQL extensions and foreign data wrappers in YugabyteDB, and he came to share this story. That's a very interesting story, folks. So stay tuned. But nevertheless, even though like we have Radek today, if you have any questions that are related or unrelated to the main topics of our live stream, still keep asking them, and we will make sure to answer them throughout this episode. And in the meantime, whenever you're watching us, just say hi and tell us where you are joining us from. And before we switch to the main topic, let me give you a couple of more updates, what happened throughout the last 2 weeks since we met, folks. First, another Voyager version was released. So let me share the screen. Voyager, for those of you who don't know, is a special tool or data platform that helps you to migrate from various relational databases, including Postgres, Oracle, and MySQL, to YugabyteDB. It basically simplifies the process. So quickly, just a quick recap what has changed since the last time we met. Once I found the share screen button. Here it is. So that's the latest release. It was released just a week ago. And as for the most interesting parts, you can see that in addition to, we improved, in one of the latest versions, we added support for the accelerated data export from Oracle and MySQL. So all the future versions of Oracle will be using our Debezium integration to move data and schema from Oracle MySQL to YugabyteDB. And in this release, we kept improving this integration. So like it's going to be faster and much more stable. Also, those of you can import data not only from some of their existing and running databases, but you also can ask Voyager to import your data from files. And those files historically could have been stored in AWS S3. And in this release, we added support for Google Cloud Storage and Azure Blob Storage. So we expanded support for other various cloud environments. So now, let me do this. Another update. I broke something with my screen. Let me.
Okay, while you fix it, I'm just saying hello to Sheerdeep, who says hello in the LinkedIn chat. And just to mention to people, we are streaming to Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and in all platforms except maybe Twitter, you can comment and ask questions, and we gather all them and from the different platforms.
Exactly. And one more update is YugabyteDB Managed, our database as a service, now supports Azure. So if you use Azure for your applications, if that's your primary or key cloud platform, so right now you've got a distributed SQL database, distributed version of Postgres running and managed for you in that cloud environment. How to start with YugabyteDB? It's pretty easy. You just go to the YugabyteDB managed website, you click the Add Cluster button, and here is under the dedicated, you can find Azure. We support many regions, not all of them yet, but probably good enough. And they are located around the planet. And you just create a cluster of a desired configuration and you're good to go. So give us feedback. We already have content that explains you how you can, let's say, use Voyager to move your data from, let's say, Azure PostgreSQL to YugabyteDB in Azure. Just give it a try and keep and help us improving this support by sharing your feedback. Any other thoughts, Franck?
And maybe, we can also mention that for the moment, the free tier is only on AWS and Google. But if you want to try on Azure, you have a free trial credits. So it's not the free tier. You can ask for free credits just to test it on Azure.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that we should add a sandbox version for Azure. And basically, this sandbox version is you're getting a single node cluster, it's just a single instance running, and it's good enough to experiment with some of their basic development needs. But what Franck also is saying, you still, if you want to test us on Azure, you can still select the dedicated, and here is where do we have this the credits? We should have the credits somewhere. I don't remember.
I can show it because maybe are you on cloud.yugabyte.com or are you on
I'm
internal
on cloud
one? So if you choose the cluster type,
somewhere here there should be a form.
You mean for the free trial?
Let
me
trial.
share my screen.
Sure.
I have it there. So basically, when you say create cluster, you can choose the free one, or you can request free trials there. And then I think then you receive it by email, and then you can choose, and you will assign the free credits to the account.
I see. Now I understand. Like I don't have that button on my UI because I have a special account, and my account can start dedicated clusters with any configuration. It's just a special privilege when I'm working for Yugabyte.
You have free credits directly.
Yeah. But I have to keep an eye on the cloud spend because of that. All right.
The good thing is also we have an alert when the cluster is idle, and to not forget about something running and taking credit.
Exactly. All right, folks. Those were highlights. The highlights is that Franck is having fun at Riviera conference in South France, and he gave a 3-hour course about SQL and distributed SQL. And also what happened throughout the last 2 weeks, we've released another Voyager version that right now makes their migration process from Oracle and MySQL to YugabyteDB even much more faster. And also we is now YugabyteDB managed database as a service offering supports Azure. Have fun. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. I'm curious. And now let's invite our special guest and let's talk about extensions and data wrappers. Let me bring Radek to the stage. Hi, Radek. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm well. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Denis and Franck.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you. You did a lot of contribution, open source contribution to Yugabyte.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun actually doing that. It was a long time ago, but still, I remember that story
and
very well.
contributions are not only code. It's also you did some blog posts. You did some. I used also some Docker files you used to build Yugabyte. So when I started at Yugabyte 2 years ago, I used your stuff also to start.
That's cool. That's good to know. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, we basically a couple of years back, one of our clients was looking for a multi-tenant SQL solution, and one of the requirements was that it's supposed to be PostgreSQL compatible. So that's how we basically landed on YugabyteDB. You know, we started by investigating various databases, and we basically by looking at various aspects. The license was the most important aspect for us. We landed on YugabyteDB, and that's how the story started. Yeah.
But yeah, just before we go deep in the woods, tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you do, what's your role at the company right now, and when you will contribute into YugabyteDB, so that the folks who are watching us know a little bit more about your personality.
Sure. So my name is Radek Gruchalski. I'm by trade a software engineer. I do software for more than 20 years. I've done backend, frontend, various things, and mostly R&D. And I'm also managing director at Klarrio GmbH. And Klarrio GmbH is part of is a group of companies of Klarrio. We are basically we are a consultancy. We work with big clients. We write software for them. We don't do body shopping, so we basically work on whatever clients need on premise at our offices. And Klarrio GmbH is a small one. We are hiring right now. So yeah, if anybody is looking for a job, and you're in Aachen, then reach out to me and let's have a chat.
Yeah, and geographically, where are you located, right? What part of the world are you from?
Yeah, so it's Aachen, North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany.
All right. You're much closer to Franck than I am.
Yeah, we're in the same time zone as Franck keeps repeating.
Yeah.
And I was not far from there when I was, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Cologne.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I learned a little bit too late about that, because otherwise I would have come down to Cologne.
Oh, that would be nice. Next time.
Yeah, next time, definitely.
And Radek, what got me curious about your contribution story, because your story started quite similar to many others. It's like when a company has a need and it distributes it, like in some database, some contemporary database, such as YugabyteDB, and you start exploring this database, and eventually you select this database or not. But you went further. You started contributing. You did not work for YugabyteDB, the vendor, right, that creates this database, but you started contributing, and those contributions were to the core database engine. That's was one big surprises for me, because I've been working with distributed database companies, open source companies for the last 8 years, and usually third-party contributors who don't have time to work on a database code on a daily basis, they contribute to extensions, to the ecosystem, etc. But it happens quite rarely when someone contributes to the core database engine. Tell us, like, how this happened, why, and as far as I understand, you were paid for this. Like, why you decided to contribute to the core database engine? Like, what was the reason? What was the motivation?
Okay. Well, I think I do have to give you a little bit of background on what was the task that we wanted to do with the database. So basically, we wanted to build a multi-tenant database. A multi-tenant database where we have one database engine, but we have multiple users who have their own dedicated resources committed to their use cases, right? So you may have a client A who's running Keycloak and client B who's running some CRM software, and this software uses completely different schema behind the scenes, right? So each of these tenants basically has their own schemas, has their own tables, databases, will run different workloads, and will insert a lot of data, at various in time intervals. And basically, what we wanted to have is a database where, when one tenant is pushing a lot of data through, it doesn't have any impact on another tenant. So that was basically the main requirement for this system. And when we did a selection process, we considered things like, going with plain PostgreSQL and doing stuff like what people usually do in AWS with RDS, where you have multiple RDS clusters, and one for one tenant, one for another tenant, and then doing some kind of data wrangling behind the scenes so that, these tenants can kind of share their data between each other, right? So with YugabyteDB, when we started looking at YugabyteDB, that was, I think, in May 2020. That was at the time when you guys released this table spaces feature, which basically is like a really powerful take on Postgres table spaces, where you can assign selected T servers to a table space, and those T servers can basically reside in a region. And obviously, a region is a term that is basically defined by these three properties: the cloud, region, and zone. But what it essentially means is, from the perspective of operational aspect, the table space can be either just a bunch of T servers sitting all in the same AWS region, for example, or they can be in completely separate regions. It's just a label that goes on T servers. So that was when we basically selected Yugabyte. We knew, okay, table spaces give us what we want. So definitely we want to go with YugabyteDB.
And so like in the tables okay, so the table spaces were the beginning, and that allowed you just to distribute different tenants across your T servers, right? Physically, even.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like how many table spaces did you have? Like how many tenants did you have in the beginning?
In the beginning, we've done just a little bit of lab testing, so maybe 3-4 tenants.
Okay.
But what was really cool was that when I started investigating YugabyteDB, and I started doing that in Docker Compose, I had basically the first 30-node cluster running in one day. So that was basically that gave us the confidence. Okay, this really runs, and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And that was this aha moment that a lot of software that is out there, open source, there's a lot of things written in readmes, saying that it does X, Y, Z, and it's stable and whatnot, and then you start running it, and it doesn't behave the way you want it to behave. And with YugabyteDB, that was basically that was so much different. I had a 30-node cluster running, and it was working. And it took us a couple of months to get our deployment really stable, because one of the things that makes us different a little bit is that for a lot of our clients, most of our clients want to have things on premise for various reasons, right? And so we had to build the whole orchestration engine for deploying YugabyteDB, operating it, running it. So we had to build that from scratch, and took us a couple of months to get there. But the basic premise of run multiple nodes and have them running, and doing their own thing without any issues, that was something that we had basically from almost day one. We were confident that it will work. So that's
okay. So now enough for cheating YugabyteDB for its good side, because eventually you came across some limitations, right? And those limitations urged you to contribute to the core database engine. How did this happen? How did you end up contributing the foreign data wrapper capability?
All right. So how did that happen? So well, I told you that we were trying to build this multi-tenant database. Where we build this multi-tenant database where we had resources isolated to a tenant. And one of the use cases was that the multi-tenant platform is a cooperative platform, which means that tenants want to share data between each other, either read-only or read-write. So normally what you would do is with PostgreSQL, you would use Postgres foreign data wrapper for that. And so we started investigating that, and we first identified the problem that the list of shared libraries that is loaded when the database starts was hard-coded in the runner program. So that was the first fix that we submitted. That was to enable shared libraries to be loaded from the actual configuration that is specified in the command line with YugabyteDB.
So basically, it was the first time that there were a need to load an extension during the start, because some Postgres extension doesn't need to be loaded when it starts. It can just be loaded when used, and this one has to be loaded at the start of the server.
Yeah, the shared object file has to be basically in the shared libraries. It has to be there. So it wasn't possible to override that. It wasn't possible to basically on the command line when you pass the arguments for shared libraries, that wasn't being picked up by the runner program. So that was the first contribution. So that was a small one.
Yeah, let's talk specifics. Take a look at the screen. Franck actually did a good job, and he prepared a list of your contributions. Which one was the first one?
You have this. The third one about shared preload libraries.
Okay, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of discussions, and generally you submitted the patch on August the 3rd. I would say that I checked those contributions, and you're very well in describing what you did, so that it helps a lot during the review process and the testing.
Yeah, and so then, actually it was 2021. I'm like a year behind. We have 2023, indeed. 2 years back, 2021.
Yeah, it took a couple of weeks, right, to
yeah, that's understandable. So what I really liked was the fact that your team was very supportive about it. We communicated on Slack and discussed all of this. So that was pretty cool. So that was the first one. And then once we could actually load Postgres foreign data wrapper shared object with a database, once I started playing with actual commands to add servers and whatnot, it turned out that none of that was supported, and that was a big one. So
okay.
Yeah, so basically what this thing involved, I mean, I have to say I am not a C developer, nor a C++ developer, so that was a big learning curve. I mean, I had to basically kind of pick this up on the job. But I had to basically investigate the whole your whole build process because I wanted to figure out how Postgres is actually doing things behind the scenes. So I had to discover your grammar file.
And that was not easy, I suppose, because the build process has to build Postgres that is made for single process, and to build it and link in other threads in the tablet server. So it's not a simple architecture to build. Huh?
No. So again, your team was helpful at picking up the basics about how to build a database, but eventually I was able to come up with an infrastructure in Docker to build YugabyteDB from sources. So to configure it, to then build it, to rebuild it, to run tests. And I open sourced most of this stuff on GitHub. I haven't maintained that for a long time, but I think it should be quite easy to pick up. The last changes I've done were for Alma Linux, so I think that's past CentOS already. So yeah, I mean, I had to basically discover how Postgres works behind the scenes, so that to figure out where are all these statements that are being enabled, disabled, where do they come from? So I found that grammar file, And I was basically, it was easy enough to just like uncomment things that were not supported, or remove the unsupported flag from them, so that these statements would then get compiled into the database. But then I also had to basically work with your testing framework. So all these Java programs that run individual compatibility tests. And I think that contribution was a few thousand lines of code, enabling all these individual tests to run. Yeah, that was basically the whole process. I mean, figuring out how to build a database. We at Klarrio, when we work with software, we like to know everything from the build stage up to the operational stage, so we can basically support that software to a certain extent by ourselves. Yeah, that was it. I think the whole contribution took about 2 months.
Yeah, that's excellent. And Franck, I have folks who are joining us. And by the way, let me show the hi from Ashwar Gantav, who is watching us from YouTube. So folks, also let us know where you're joining from. Just say hi, and feel free to ask the questions that are related to this contribution to extensions and foreign data wrappers, or that are unrelated. So feel free to bother us, because this live stream will be up and running for the next 30 minutes or so. So feel free to bother us with the questions. And Franck, you should have a bookmark. You should have a bookmark to this infrastructure that Radek created. Could you quickly show it to us, because you said you learned a lot from it?
Let me share that.
Okay.
I think, yeah, that's the one in your GitHub, the build infrastructure. And yeah, because it can be complex to build. The idea is that many simple extensions, you can just build it with Postgres and move the library files, the binary files to Yugabyte. If you build it with Postgres 11, same compatibility, it should work. But when there is a lot of dependencies, it's quite difficult, and the best is to build it with the build of Yugabyte. And basically, this is what you did, and this is what I was using the first time I wanted to build an extension. And I don't think we have documented that fully yet. So still using that, your work as the documented way to build it. But I can show you, it's an internal document, but there is nothing secret in it. I just received an email from a colleague this morning. The goal is to document how to build an extension, and the example was building the Oracle foreign data wrapper to connect to an Oracle database. And basically, it's the same idea as what you did building the extension. The thing is that when we build Yugabyte, we build it with a special glibc, not the one on the OS, to avoid many problems, like Postgres had many problems when glibc was updated with a different collation, and then the indexes were corrupted. So it's always good to build a database software with all the libraries with it, and then the extensions must be built with the same dependency.
Yeah, and that's basically the reason why I built the infrastructure, because what I noticed was that I couldn't just bring a Postgres foreign data wrapper that came from GitHub, the binary that they distribute. It had to be actually built with YugabyteDB. So the build process of YugabyteDB includes instructions in the make file to load extensions that are in a specific directory, and it builds them while building the database. So this is basically what I included in the build process.
Yeah. And we still need to document it clearly, to test it on multiple complex extensions, and to document it clearly so that it's easy. And our goal is also that extensions that are useful and work just that we build them ready to be used by people.
Yeah.
Now let's take a pause, folks, here before we keep digging into their contribution story and show the folks who are watching us why the foreign data wrapper capability is so crucial, not only for Postgres but also for YugabyteDB. So Franck, show your cool demo that you worked on.
Yeah.
So that let's see how it works. What that gives us.
So first, you may be surprised. I'm sharing AWS Amazon Redshift, so the data warehouse service in Amazon, just because we do not optimize for data warehouse in Yugabyte, but you may have data on Redshift, for example. And the cool thing is that Redshift is not Postgres compatible, but was built from Postgres, from an old version of Postgres. And yeah, we can also see it. There is a nice query editor with Redshift in AWS. And if, for example, I select version, you see if you select the version from Redshift, which is a different database, but it was built on Postgres 8. So that's a really old one. Their goal is not to be Postgres compatible, but it was built on Postgres 8, which means that it uses the same protocol, the same drivers, which means that we can use the Postgres foreign data wrapper to access Redshift. And that's basically what I will do.
Question for you. When you're talking about that foreign data wrapper, this is something that is built in Postgres and that allows you to connect to another standalone Postgres server, that foreign data wrapper?
Yeah, the foreign data wrapper framework is built in Postgres. It's the extensibility of Postgres, but then you need specific libraries for each destination with the client for the other database or the drivers for the other database. And here the idea is to use the Postgres foreign data wrapper that helps to connect to other Postgres databases or Postgres compatible, or even just having the same wire protocol.
All right. It makes sense. It's so that folks, you understand foreign data wrappers allows you to read data from your Postgres instance, send the query to your Postgres instance, and that Postgres instance can use a foreign data wrapper to read the data from another database. And the database can be Postgres compatible, or it can be completely incompatible, such as MongoDB or Cassandra, or it can be just a flat file with data in the CSV format or JSON.
I think there is a list of PostgreSQL foreign data wrapper. I think there is in the Postgres wiki a list of foreign data wrapper, and you have an idea of course, well-known databases, but also NoSQL databases, files, LDAP. Why not? So a lot of things. So those are extensions that needs to be built with Yugabyte if you want to use them. The simplest one is when you have the Postgres one, because Radek has built it, and we have it directly with when we ship Yugabyte. So the first thing I did was to set a password in my Redshift, and a user and a password, so that I can connect. And basically, I'm still in Redshift, and I will show a query on those tables that I can run there. And what I will do is run the same query, but from Yugabyte. From Yugabyte, reading data from Redshift. And then I will go to a cluster that I have in the cloud. And I think I can do that from the Cloud Shell. If I can't, I will connect to it. But that should work. And it's always easy just to start the Cloud Shell. And this one, if I remember my password, and put that a bit larger. So here I'm connected to Yugabyte, simply. And let me just take the file where I have.
Yeah, that's YugabyteDB managed, folks, the DB as version. You can install it. So what Radek was doing, Radek was building it, and it was running YugabyteDB on premises, right, Radek?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm showing here the version of Yugabyte. We are in the latest preview 1. And here I will simply create extension because the libraries are there and the libraries are loaded with the first change that Radek did. And I just say create extension. It's still in beta. I think that there are just a few things that needs to be documented and tested. So you still have you have the message that it is in beta. And
it's strange. Yeah, I mean, this feature was released long time ago. It looks it looks more like we need to prioritize and to make sure that everything is in place from the docs standpoint, etc., and then just to remove this hint. Because Radek,
yeah, it's a question of priority if nobody uses it, and also beta doesn't mean that you cannot choose it. It's just that maybe we don't have all the regression tests for all cases, because you can do a lot of things with the foreign data wrapper. You can even update data in transactions elsewhere. So there are a lot of things to do. What I will do here is just read from another database. So I cannot.
But speaking about the beta, yeah, like we have Radek here. Radek, any stability issues, any errors or exceptions related to this foreign data wrapper that you contributed a long time ago?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. So it works for us.
Okay, that's good. That's good. At least one of the use cases is covered, and I think that.
Yeah, I think there are maybe a couple of options that had dependencies on some other things, so they couldn't be really enabled. But they are not preventing anybody from using foreign data wrapper in a general sense, basically connecting to another database table on another server instance and having basically foreign data wrapper working.
Okay.
So now,
sorry, thank you for interrupting you, Franck.
No problem. So the only thing, creating the extensions just gives the ability to create server. So that's the definition of the connection to the server. So this is the host of my Redshift server on AWS with this port, and the name of the database is just the name of the database where I have my my sample tables there. And so first you create a server. This doesn't connect. Then you need a user. And the thing is that you map your current user to a foreign user. So here I'm mapping admin because I'm connected as admin, which is probably not a good idea in production, but it's just a lab. And I mentioned this user, my local user that I'm using there. If I select user, I am admin there. So my local user will map the credential to the foreign credential. So that's the user and the password that I've just set in Redshift. And then that means that I can connect to it, but I can also import the metadata so that in Yugabyte, in the Yugabyte catalog, there is enough information to know which tables are accessible. And for that, I will put them in a schema because it's just always good to have a logical namespace, especially if it's tables that are remote. It's good to know that they are in a specific schema. And then I will use the import foreign. Sorry, that was fast. Import foreign schema. So that's the name of the schema on Redshift. That's the name of the server that I've defined with the host and the port into my local schema. And as I'm connected as admin locally, it will directly, transparently use the mapping to connect with those credentials. And now all the metadata about the foreign tables are available there, and which means that I can simply
question again.
query them.
I will interrupt you once again. Sorry about that. But like, is this step necessary? What happens if I send the request to this foreign table without importing the schema? Will the schema be imported automatically, or I will get an exception?
They will just not be known. So you need to import it or define it. You need to have the DDL that defines the metadata, but also some options. Depending on the databases, you may want to add some options like the collation or also the fetch size. If your database is remote with high latency, probably you want to read with a larger fetch size. So some just definitions. Also, the goal is that you must define exactly what you expose. It's kind of encapsulating the access. You don't want to give access to everything in a remote database, but a specific tables or specific schemas.
Then a follow-up question: what happens if the schema changes on the Redshift side? What should I do?
That's a good question. I think we have to re-import it, but we will test that at the end if you want.
We'll test it later. All right, let's move forward with the last mile, right? I think the last step.
So now I can query those tables, but I can also list them with \d described and external table, and with a plus we have more information about the option. So this just lists the foreign tables that I have in my local TPCH schema. All tables are there, and their option is just the name on the foreign database of the schema and the table, because we can map them to different names if we want. And then basically what I will do, first I will set timing on to see how long it takes. And what I will do, the query that I've run there remotely, so that was run. Let me see. I don't know if we have the time it takes, but it was fast, running on Redshift. And I will run that here. I don't have to change anything because I used the same table names and schema names. Looks like my copy paste. I don't know why I removed the few space. Let me put that. Okay. No problem. I will do that because I can connect from there also, I think. I don't know why my copy paste. Oh, okay. I will simply go through a notepad, and I think it will be okay. I don't know why the space disappeared. So here you can see that I am querying the foreign tables. It takes some time because there is a lot of data, and I think I'm in the same region, but maybe in different zones. But I can also explain.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
Analyze. I will say costs of, just to have not the rows to white, and if the copy paste is still working. I have to take it again from my notepad. And then we have the execution plan. And recommendation, always look at the execution plan, because the foreign data wrapper does a lot of very smart things, but that depends on the capabilities of the foreign database also. And this one is really cool because I had a join here between three tables. Three tables that are quite large, but there are some filters and group bys and order by. And for sure, I don't want to fetch the whole tables and join them in Yugabyte. And you can see that the join was pushed down to the foreign scan. The foreign scan doesn't scan directly the tables. It scans the join.
That's excellent. I mean,
so it's
this is the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. The
So-
foreign data wrapper builds a query to send to the foreign table, and trying to push down the maximum of things like the join. We don't see the where clause there, but it was also pushed down. The only thing that is done locally is the sort of those 10,000 rows. So that's not a problem. All filtering and group by was done remotely. I think the sort is done locally just to be sure about the different collations of the databases. And sort depends on the collations. So I don't know if it's by default or just it checks the collations and better to sort them. But that's the most important, and we can see it.
All right,
yeah,
man.
all the rows
the
came from there.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the demo. Let me quickly recap for those who are watching us. So what Franck showed you, like this query was executed from the Cloud Shell that is connected to YugabyteDB managed instance. But the YugabyteDB forwarded this query to Redshift. We used foreign data wrapper that connected YugabyteDB instance with Redshift and Amazon. And right now you can use YugabyteDB to query that analytical data set that is hosted in Redshift. And this is how it works. And the query is very well performant because what Franck showed you, there is the foreign scan operation in your execution plan, which means that the all heavy lifting computational part happened on the Redshift side, which is what we want to achieve. And this foreign data wrapper feature that was demonstrated by Franck was contributed by Radek. So let's say thank you to Radek, who contributed this feature and enabled the foreign data wrapper capabilities in YugabyteDB a few years ago.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, so I was looking at all these statements that Franck was executing, and it came to my mind. I mean, when you talk from memory, it's just like a blur. Those were these individual statements that Franck was executing. Those were the ones that I basically had to add the support for in order to allow Postgres foreign data wrapper to work. So the alter server, create server, import foreign schema, and these kind of things. So all these individual things had to be enabled and then tested. So that's basically what the contribution was. And the other cool thing is, so Postgres foreign data wrapper or foreign data wrapper functionality in general works absolutely fine with the Postgres permission system, so that when you have the remote user who only has the ability to read, you will only be able to read. When you map your user to a user who has read-write access, you can do insert from your Yugabyte instance, and that insert will also go to your Redshift database. So, I mean, this all works like any other table, basically.
And it doesn't break the security, and that's perfect. Yeah. It's an extension. And we have a question.
Yep, let me show it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is from Ashward. If we can build the data structure and write the coding with any programming language like Python, Java, etc. So after that, we can extract L and push up into the API with their user ID and password.
I think if I understand the question, it's one thing to read directly SQL tables, but we can also think about reading from web services. We can also think about calling a Lambda that will get data from something else. And there are two possibilities. One with the foreign data wrappers, because there are also some foreign data wrappers that can map to web services. And if not, and I think that's what Eshwar is mentioning, as we can run procedural code in Yugabyte thanks to the Postgres extensibility and languages. There are extensions to run Python, there are extensions to run Java in the database. And then with this code, we can also access external data through any API. That can be an open API or a proprietary API. I don't know if you are in a company.
I can even, Frank, give an example. I was you showed today that Postgres page that lists various foreign data wrappers that were officially created, and I was exploring it yesterday. I came across a foreign data wrapper for Twitter, and I decided to install and to play with it. But basically, this is an example of when you can use your you can run a SQL query in Postgres, and that SQL query in Postgres will pull some data from your Twitter account, or like from any other Twitter account.
Oh, cool!
I failed to install that extension because the extension is no longer maintained. It was created when Postgres had version 9 was the primary one, and I was trying to compile that extension against Postgres 15, and it failed. There were some of the issues relating to the syntax of the method. Some of the APIs are no longer supported.
But I think the Twitter API is a bit broken also today.
Yeah, exactly. But at least, yeah, like I failed much earlier. I was not. I didn't manage to compile that extension data wrapper for Postgres 15. But nevertheless, an example, right? Where you can have something else, and you can basically create your foreign data wrapper.
It can be also a proprietary API. If you are a telecom company, you have some telecom hardware that has API to provide data, and you can also build something. Yeah.
Another question from LinkedIn, from Chordeep. Yes, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Is foreign data wrapper similar to DB-link concept in Oracle?
Yes, it is. There are also DB links in Postgres that existed before the foreign data wrapper. But the foreign data wrapper, if you want to compare, foreign data wrapper is like DB links and the Oracle gateway, because DB links in Oracle connect only to another Oracle database. But you can add another component that is the Oracle Gateway Heterogeneous Service that can connect to another one. For example, from Oracle, I can also connect to Yugabyte to send data to it.
But can I connect from Oracle using the DB-link to Twitter if I want?
Huh? No.
Huh?
I don't know how to do that easily. You can write external procedures in C and compile it and run that. Yeah.
But is there any extension for Oracle?
That there also there is also DBMS HTTP that we have also in Yugabyte thanks to the ORA FC extension.
Okay, so technically it should be feasible.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and that was and folks, we are running out of time, and that was a wonderful conversation. Thanks a lot, Radek, for coming, and thanks a lot, Frank, to you for demonstrating how to use the contributed foreign data wrapper with Amazon Redshift. The final question to you, Radek, though, if you had a chance to contribute to YugabyteDB, what would you contribute these days if you had time and if you had any motivation?
So from the database features, I don't really know. There aren't that many that aren't really supported. But what I would, what I wanted to do were two things. So one was snapshots, automating, exporting, importing snapshots. And the other one, because you have a process which describes how to do that. It's a fairly involved process. So that was one, automate that. We did that once internally for a client, but that is a closed source code. And the other one would be to have some kind of I don't know, a catalog of extensions that can be just easily brought into the database. I think Supabase has something similar to that. That would be really, really nice. Like have basically like a catalog with individual extensions and their versions, and that with one click, it's being basically imported to the database, loaded, and you can use it. So those kind of two things. From a user perspective, that's more.
What? Yeah.
In the Slack channel, we have a contributors channel where sometimes people ask if I want to start, where is it easy to start? Because, Radek, you really started with the most difficult, going into the C code of something that was not so easy. But we have also some Git issues that are maybe simpler if people want to start to contribute.
Yeah, I think it might be actually a pretty good idea. I've been pondering about that a long time. It's probably a good idea to sit down and write a proper article about how to build the database from the source, from ground up, clone the source. Whatever has to be installed, and then just build the database. I think that would be that's something that I will definitely look into because it sits in my mind for a very long time.
So can we treat this as your commitment?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, let's.
Oh, if you don't do it, we will do it, but then your review will be very helpful.
That one I can definitely do. It's basically breaking down the GitHub repository into an article. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So, folks, we are already over the hour, but we have a question that we cannot skip. So, so the question is from Abul. Just wanted to know common issues during migration and post-migration, really specific to financial services and banks. I can start answering, and then, folks, you can expand my answer. So, Abul, we don't have a list of any specific issues or etc. It all depends on your schema, on your data volume, on your requirements. But there are several things that you need to keep in mind. That YugabyteDB, a positive thing is that YugabyteDB is compliant with Postgres, so which means that if right now your original system is running on Postgres, the migration will be really smooth for you. It doesn't mean that it will be just a lift and shift, but most of the stuff that you created will work out of the box. But then you would need to run some load testing and performance testing to find some places in your application logic that needs to have some optimization, because you will be moving from an architecture when you have, let's say, a single database server to an architecture with multiple database nodes, and your queries will be executed across multiple database nodes. However, we also understand what we discovered, like not one common issue, but one common inconvenience that we had in the past. Those who move from one database to another, the most challenging and the most time-consuming part is just to migrate existing schema and data from your target database to YugabyteDB. But for that stuff, we have the product called YugabyteDB Voyager. So you can Google for it. We have demos. We have it documented on the docs. So generally, whether you use Postgres, Oracle, MySQL, or other flavors of these databases, you can just connect. You can migrate schema, data, and here you go. So at least we are trying to simplify this process. So any extra suggestions or advice from you, Franck and Radek?
I think when I see financial, there is something important also looking at the security compliance certifications, all that you may have on the previous platform, and be sure that we have the same. We also look at that in finance. There are some required, depending on the countries. There are some compliance that is required.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some certification listed on the website. I don't know them by heart, but that's also something to look at if you move from a system that was certified for PCI, or I don't know.
All right. Okay. So Abul, hope this answers your question. If you'd like to learn more details, you can find us in Slack. Just send us a note, and we can elaborate on what's interesting for you. Having said that, folks, Radek and Franck, thanks for hosting this episode, and thanks for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye.